Joined now by the specialist obesity dietitian Nicole Berberian. Nicole, welcome and thanks for coming in. Salt, we've talked about this before, we're still worried.
Still carrying on. This is something that has been pressurising the food industry for decades, and actually as a UK we've done quite well. In fact, we were leading the world. If you look at same products elsewhere, you'll see we have been doing well.
We were leading the world.
We were. There's been some changes in the lobbies that go against the Food Standard Agency, and it was handed back to the Department of Health. So things changed a bit, and it was sort of kind of handed back to the food industry to kind of do it themselves with just encouragement to do it rather than the strict push. But that's what these stories are doing again. We're trying to say, okay, you haven't met your targets. They set targets and they haven't been met. So we're trying to get the food industry back onto it to look a little bit closer. The thing is that when we've looked at this in the past, we've seen that some brands have done it, which means it's possible. And it just needs to happen across all brands.
Why does the food industry put salt in? Is it mainly for taste or for preservative?
So many reasons, and you can twist the story depending on what you want to get out of it.
We don't twist stories.
But no, not you, as in the food manufacturers. They need it in there maybe for food safety. They need it in there maybe for the rising of bread. They need it in there for the mould on the cheeses. And you need it for taste. But what level do you need? And is it just the taste factor? Because if you do a panel and you do a consumer panel and you give them the product in 2 different formulations and you go, you know what, they kind of preferred the one with high salt. Well, have they got the high salt one because it was taste, or was it because it was food safety?
Do you get conditioned to salt usage? I mean, is it like, you know,
yes,
when you make a cup of tea with 2 sugars and you get used to it and then you come down to 1 and suddenly that's normal?
You do, which is why what we've done in this country over the years is we've had a staged reduction in salt. We haven't told to the food manufacturers that it just has to be this target straight away, because then the consumers will not want that product ever again. So what instead we've done in this country is done a sort of decade by decade, slow, bring it down, in fact, year by year. Pressure to do so has meant that our tastes have changed. And we are consuming products that were a lot saltier 2 decades ago, and probably none of us have noticed. So yes, we do get conditioned.
We do need salt in our diet though, don't we? We need some salt.
We do, and that's, of course, that's a good question. We need salt in our bodies for the way the nerves work, the muscle communication. It needs a bit of sodium, but we're talking 0.5 grams. 6 grams is what we've got as our UK amount of salt to have a day. Our levels have come down to about 8 grams or so, and so what's going on over there?
James' lunch.
What's going on?
Just to see how many grams of salt.
We're trying not to advertise the company, but yeah, I'm a bit addicted to sushi for lunch now. But you see, I'm aware. I'm going to open up so you can't see the label. I'm aware that when I eat sushi and I slather it in soy sauce,
yes,
that's very, very salty. I'm aware of that. But then I look at it and I think, but it's low fat, it's high protein, it's low sugar. So I kind of balance. I think it's good for me in one sense, bad for me on others. And is that what we need to do? We need to be
from the point of consumers, it's actually very easy to cut your salt levels down. When you've got a diet that you've made the food yourself, it's going to be very easy to control your levels. In that case, what we find most of the salt then comes from is from your bread and your cereals and your cheeses, which is why, you know, that's something that food manufacturers can look at. But when you're buying food out, that's when it can go really sky high. And yes, you can make some healthy choices. You can go for the salads, you can go for the food that has got less dressings on without the stocks and the sauces on them, and your salt levels will come down. So there's some basic changes you can make. And yes, adding lots of condiments yourself is going to increase your salt levels.
I'll leave my bumper bag of salt and vinegar crisps down there for now.
Yeah, and his massive sandwich.
Nicole, very good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
It's called a hidden killer, causing strokes, high blood pressure and heart disease, claiming some 14,000 lives every year. All preventable with a simple lifestyle adjustment. Eat less salt. In the South London kitchen, salt is definitely off the menu. Now, most people would add salt to boiling pasta, but you're not going to do that. Why?
Well, because I don't like the flavour of salt. It's rather disgusting. We don't eat it, and also it's not good for you.
Professor Graham McGregor is warning that the failure to limit salt intake is going to have deadly consequences.
I don't think consumers are as aware, and our survey clearly indicated that. I think only 40% of people in the population thought that salt was bad for them. But I mean, the problem is that most of the salt we eat is added by the food industry. So you don't have much choice, you know, unless you cook all your own food at home and never go out, which is not very realistic. And people want instant food, the pace of life and so on. So we're more and more dependent on the food industry putting all this salt in. And that is far too much, puts up our blood pressure, and then we die prematurely.
Health campaigners, Consensus Action on Salt and Health, work with the food industry and the government to reduce the amount of salt in our foods. They all agreed to a 10% reduction by 2017, but so far, out of 28 food categories, only one is on target. That's bread rolls. There's a hell of a lot of ignorance when it comes to salt consumption. We simply don't understand how salt gets into our diets. 30% of us think it's because of pizzas or other frozen ready-made meals. 16% of us think it's because of crisps or other savoury snacks. And 10% of us think it's because of the salt we use in our cooking. But they're all wrong. Most of the salt that gets into our diets is through bread and cereals. And that's the problem. It's the salt hidden in less obvious foods that's potentially lethal.
So you think that you're having a healthy option when you're going to eat your dinner. You've chosen perhaps a pizza that's slightly lower in salt, and then you might decide to have a hot chocolate for afterwards. We found this hot chocolate, which actually is saltier by concentration than seawater is. Just 1 cup of it has got more salt in it than a packet of crisps.
Salt reduction could save money and lives, but that will only happen if the government agrees to make voluntary reduction targets mandatory. That's something food manufacturers have resisted so far, and campaigners say that's because they're putting profits ahead of our health. Ashish Joshi, Sky